Research and recording of Canadian Creepies happens on the shared land and traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. A key treaty governing this territory is the Dish with One Spoon Agreement. The treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee people binds them to share and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, settlers, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. We all share the responsibility of ensuring the dish is never empty, meaning we must take care of the land and the creatures we share it with.
Welcome back, Creepy Crew, to another episode of Canadian Creepies. I'm Valerie.
And I'm Kyle. I'm not Allie.
He's not Allie. He's Kyle.
My script here says that I'm Allie, but I'm Kyle. I just want to be perfectly clear. And today, we're heading into the dark underworld of organized crime in Canada. Buckle up, bucko, because this one is intense.
That's right. Tonight we're diving deep into, today, whenever you listen to it, we're diving deep into the Montreal mafia, a criminal empire that has shaped Canadian history in ways you might not even realize.
At the center of it all, the Rizzuto Crime Family. A powerhouse of money, power, and violence that ruled the streets of Montreal for decades. But when the tides turned, what followed was a bloody battle for control that would shake the city to its core.
We'll walk you through the rise of Vito Rizzuto, his iron grip on the underworld, and how his downfall triggered a brutal, deadly power struggle. Murders, betrayals, and a shifting landscape of crime. This story has it all.
So grab a drink, settle in, and let's uncover the dark secrets of the Montreal Mafia. But be warned, once you step into this world, there's no turning back.
Dun, dun, dun.
I try to escape, but they keep pulling me back in.
That's right. And this one, I chose this particular topic because I knew you would be recording, and you said this was something that was interesting to you.
I like the mafia.
And we and we haven't done any organized crime stuff yet, so
No, we haven't.
Should we dive right into it?
Yeah.
And I'm going to pre-apologize for some of my Italian pronunciations. I'm the least Italian person.
And I'm going to pre-say thanks, or no, I'm going to say you're welcome for not doing my Italian impressions.
We're not going to do any Italian impressions.
We're going to really
It's off the table.
Off the table.
Not allowed.
Not chill.
Not chill.
But yeah,
as much as I love the Real Housewives of New Jersey.
Mm-hmm, yeah, it's a hard one. It's hard not to slip into the Italian. We grew up with Mario.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Okay, ready?
Yeah, you don't want to go into it?
No, I don't.
Okay.
The Rizzuto Crime Family was one of the most powerful criminal organizations in Canadian history, shaping the underworld of Montreal for decades. So this will tie into that mafia show that's on Crave that I was watching.
Oh.
And for those of you who follow us on Instagram, I posted a story the one day and I was like, I'm watching this. And this, if you watch that, the Rizzutos have to do with, you'll see. It all comes together.
That's cool.
It's a lot of men. It's a lot of men.
What?
Names.
You're kidding.
Yeah, it is. So their rise to dominance was marked by strategic alliances, which is very Survivor. That's such Survivor verbiage. Brutal elimination of rivals and deep ties to international crime syndicates. This is a detailed look at how they built their empire. So the origins start with Nicolo Rizzuto, and he lays the foundation.
Okay.
The Rizzuto family's story begins in Cattolica Eraclea, Sicily, a town with deep ties to the Sicilian mafia. Nicolo Rizzuto was born there in 1924 and grew up surrounded by mafia influence. In the 1950s, Amid Italy's crackdown on the mafia, Niccolo and his family immigrated to Canada, settling in Montreal, Quebec.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
So much mafia in Italy.
So much, yeah. Yeah, well,
at least for this story.
That makes sense.
I don't want to.
I'll be honest, I was distracted. I realized that I gave you too much gain.
Too much gain. I noticed that.
And it was really crunchy there for a second.
I noticed that.
But I think I fixed it.
Great. Okay. So I'm not going to say it again because our listeners weren't distracted.
No.
So at the time, Montreal's underworld was dominated. So in 1924, when Niccolo Rizzuto and his family, he was born in 1924. My bad. In the 50s, Niccolo Rizzuto and his family immigrated to Montreal, Canada.
Okay.
To Montreal, Quebec, Canada. We know. At this time, Montreal's underworld was dominated by the Calabrese mafia.
Okay.
I was going to say Calabrese, but it's probably Calabrese.
Calabrese.
Yeah.
Okay.
Specifically, the Catroni crime family, led by Vincenzo Catroni.
Okay.
You might need like a pen and paper to I'm just kidding.
Vincenzo?
Yeah, so the Catronis controlled gambling, drug trafficking, and extortion, but there was tension between the Calabrians and the growing number of Sicilian immigrants who wanted their own slice of the criminal pie.
Right.
So everybody was just coming over from Italy. Not everybody. We're not going to stereotype. Niccolo Rizzuto quickly established himself as a charismatic and ambitious figure.
Yes.
Operating under the Catronis while secretly building his own power base among the Sicilian mobsters. So he was like a double agent.
Oh, wow.
He began to challenge the Catronis by controlling drug routes and forming his own faction. This tension erupted to a violent war in the 1970s known as the Montreal Mafia War.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
It's crazy. And this would have been versus the Sicilians and the Calabrians. And Calabrians.
I can't.
I'm just trying to say it correct.
I know, you're doing it right. You're doing good.
Calabrians. But what I saw, there was... It's going to come up later, but I believe it was Rizzuto. Mm-hmm. Somebody in the Rizzuto family. It'll come up later. I'll bring it up later.
Okay.
But it was about... no, I kind of want to talk about it now. Because in the 70s, the CBC did this. I just happened to see this recently.
Yeah.
So the CBC was talking about, or somebody was talking about how hardcore reporters were, especially in the 70s. And... there was a segment on CBC called Connections, maybe?
You're talking about what you watched on Crave, right?
I don't know if I saw this on Crave or I saw this somewhere else.
Okay.
But there was this, because Poilievre is talking about defunding the CBC. So there's also all this stuff about the CBC content going around, too.
Sure, yeah.
So in the 70s, these CBC reporters on this show, this 5 p.m., 6 p.m. news show, did a segment where they went undercover and were following around one of these crime families. Actually, I think it was one of the crime families in Toronto who will come up later. And they were talking about how people don't do, reporters aren't like that anymore.
Yep.
Anyway, it was just so I thought 70s and anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 70s were...
It was they were more gonzo.
Yeah. Daisy.
Yeah, the dog farted.
Oh, that's bad.
It's not good.
Okay. Niccolo
Smells like
Rizzuto,
she ate a skunk.
Yeah, she did. Niccolo Rizzuto aligned with other Sicilian mobsters and launched a rebellion against the Catroni family. This culminated in the 1978 assassination of Paolo Violi, the Catroni family's acting boss, who was shot in the head in a Montreal cafe.
Wow.
With Violi gone, the Calabrians were weakened, and Niccolo Rizzuto effectively took control of the city's mafia operations. Though Niccolo was the patriarch, his son Vito Rizzuto would be the one to elevate the family to an international powerhouse. So Niccolo came in, played both sides, turned them against each other, and then took advantage of the space in between when there was one.
Yeah.
And then... taught his son to rule the kingdom.
That's pretty crazy. That's huge.
Imagine if he would have like put that energy towards, I don't know, solving world hunger.
Yeah.
You know? But Daisy. Oh my God.
She's anxious. She thinks she knows you're going away.
Yeah.
Valerie's going away on a trip.
Going away for the dance competition.
Dance competition.
Okay, so let's talk about Vito Rizzuto's leadership. See, now you're getting it.
Okay.
You're smelling it now. If anybody, give me an email if you've smelled your dog's farts recently, because they're next level. And they look at you so innocently, like, what'd I do?
You know what you've done.
You know what you've done. You've soiled the air. Okay, Vito Rizzuto was highly intelligent, diplomatic, and ruthless. This was a combination that made him an exceptional crime boss.
Yeah.
Unlike other mafia leaders who relied on brute force alone, Vito was a strategist who built alliances rather than just eliminating rivals.
Right.
So I'm going to think of Vito as like... Or I'm going to think of the Montreal, like... Just the words that are being used, very Survivor.
yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say. I'm picturing that. We're also watching Survivor.
Watching Survivor. But so that's how it's going to make me easier to remember who's doing what when.
Yeah.
Because if I think of it in Survivor terms.
They're playing both sides.
Right, the blindsiding. He blindsided someone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Under Vito's leadership, Montreal became one of North America's biggest drug distribution hubs.
Yeah.
The Rizzuto family dominated cocaine trafficking, forging direct connections with Colombian cartels.
Yep.
The Calabrian mafia, or Narangata, I'm not sure how to say that, but that's the one in the Crave, the Mafia Boss show. And even criminal organizations in the United States, South America, and Europe.
This is interesting. This is painting a better picture in my head.
Yeah.
For the timeline of stuff in Canada. Right?
Also, it's good to know that, like, Canada also has, like, a vast history of being involved in the drug trade.
Yeah, we were there, too. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just that guy in the States with Johnny Depp starred in that movie.
Nuh-uh.
So Montreal's location, the city was perfect for smuggling drugs from Europe and South America into the U.S. and Canada.
Yay.
The port of Montreal, sorry?
Right on the water.
Oh, yeah, right on the water. Well, the Rizzutos had influence over shipping routes using containers, fishing boats, and corrupt dock workers to move drugs undetected. So they used the port of Montreal. The good old days, the 70s.
You just pop them in the shipping containers.
They also had a Hells Angels alliance. Ooh. Vito partnered with Hells Angels, allowing them to distribute cocaine in Canada while the Rizzutos remained the main suppliers.
Yep.
Okay, so Vito partnered with... I'm just trying to understand that.
Okay, one second.
Oh, the Rizzutos were the main... Bless you.
You. Yeah, you. Still haunting the same old fast fashion? Time to dig up something better with Back from the Dead Goods, a Canadian small business where forgotten threads get a second life and sustainability meets spooky. This isn't just upcycled clothing, it's resurrected fashion with an eerie edge. Handpicked, reworked, and revived, every piece is as unique as a ghost story whispered at midnight. And because you're a part of the Canadian Creepies family, you get an exclusive deal. Use code Canadian Creepies at checkout for 10% off. Find them lurking on Instagram, Etsy, and Poshmark. Links are in the episode description. Give your wardrobe a second chance at life, if you dare.
I won't.
You won't do it. So the Rizzutos were the main suppliers of the cocaine, and the Hells Angels sold the cocaine. Understood. By the 1990s and early 2000s, the Rizzuto crime family was raking in billions of dollars, controlling not just drugs, but also illegal gambling, construction rackets, loan sharking, and money laundering operations across Canada and beyond. The Rizzuto family remained deeply connected to the Sicilian mafia, as well, Cosa Nostra, which allowed them to tap into global crime networks. Vito was seen as a bridge between Canadian, American, and Sicilian crime groups, ensuring smooth cooperation between them. And at the same time, the Rizzutos infiltrated Canadian institutions. So they infiltrated the construction industry. The family controlled key unions and rigged contracts for major infrastructure projects in Quebec. They also infiltrated law enforcement and politics. That's not a surprise.
No,
there were numerous reports of corrupt police officers and politicians being paid off to ignore mafia activities. And also they infiltrated the banking industry.
Yeah.
The family ran complex financial schemes to launder money through legitimate businesses and Swiss banks.
Wow. Corruption in all of our major institutions. And one thing I didn't look into, but I know is something is true of the States. So in the 70s, it was like before... in Chicago specifically, I know the mafia controlled like a lot of the abortion. Right. Yeah, you were saying this to me the other day.
Like sort of like the abortion. I hate saying it, but like the abortion market.
Right. Yeah.
Like they control that. So I imagine that there was also the mafia here was also probably involved. That's just an assumption.
Sure.
But if Vito's got ties to the Americans and the Americans are making bank from providing abortions, then
of course they're gonna do the same thing.
Of course. Vito's leadership created a criminal dynasty that seemed untouchable, but all empires eventually fall. The cracks began to show when Vito was arrested in the U.S. for a New York triple murder from 1981.
Ooh.
And his absence led to a power vacuum that would set off a violent chain of events.
Oh, no.
Yeah. In 2004, Vito Rizzuto was arrested and extradited to the U.S., sentenced to 10 years for his role in the 1981 murders of 3 Bonanno Bonanno.
It wasn't me.
Bonanno mafia captains in Brooklyn.
Okay.
His imprisonment shattered the Rizzuto family's stability as rivals and former allies began to turn on each other in a brutal war for control. So they were just taking a page out of his playbook. They were like, we'll do what Vito did. But everybody had that idea.
Right. Yeah, of course. Well, Vito's gone.
That's right.
The mouse will play.
The mouse will play. What followed was a wave of assassinations, betrayals, and the eventual downfall of the Rizzuto empire. But that's a story for the next part of the episode.
Ooh.
The Rizzuto crime family didn't just dominate Montreal, they had international influence, deep institutional corruption, and billions of dollars in criminal revenue. Their rise was marked by strategic alliances, global drug trafficking, and a level of power that made them nearly untouchable. But absolute power always attracts enemies. And when Vito Rizzuto was removed from the picture, the cracks in the empire turned into an all-out war.
Yeah.
Yeah. But before we talk about...
When was this? Sorry, this is the 80s?
This...
Late 80s, is that what they said?
Was in 2004 when he was arrested.
Oh, what the heck?
Yeah. But we're going to talk about... Before we get into that, we're going to talk about the downfall of Vito.
Which was in the 80s?
The triple murder in New York happened in the 80s.
Okay.
The downfall happened in 2004 when he was arrested.
Oh, okay.
And he got caught for that murder.
Oh, now I understand. Sorry.
That's okay. So for decades, Vito Rizzuto was considered untouchable. He was a master strategist, a peacemaker among rival factions, and a key figure in the global underworld. But his past caught up with him, and when he was arrested and extradited to the U.S., it set off a chain reaction of betrayal, bloodshed, and destruction that ultimately dismantled the once mighty Rizzuto crime family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to chat about the 1981... So here's the murder, the New York murder, and Vito's extradition.
Okay.
The event that sealed Vito's fate occurred decades before his arrest. In 1981, the Bonanno crime family in New York was in turmoil. Their boss, Philip Rusty Rastelli, was in prison, and internal factions were vying for control. A rogue faction led by Alphonse, Sonny Red, Indelicato, Philip Giacconi, and Dominic Trinchera attempted to overthrow the existing Bonanno leadership.
Yeah.
Joseph Massino, a loyalist to Rastelli, conspired to eliminate them before they could seize power.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
You following?
I'm following.
Vito Rizzuto, who had strong ties to the Bonannos, was allegedly brought in as a hitman. And on May 5th, 1981, inside a Brooklyn social club, Indelicato, Giacconi, and Trinchera were ambushed and executed. The hit was orchestrated by Massino and Salvatore Vitali, but Rizzuto personally participated in the killings, reportedly firing the first shot.
Oh, wow. So they brought in the Canadian mafiosa people to come do this.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's how hard Canadians are.
Yeah. Hardcore. They're like, we'll get those crazy bastards up north.
That's right. The murders consolidated Massino's power.
Okay.
But the crime remained unsolved for years. It wasn't until the early 2000s when Bonanno members started cooperating with the FBI that details emerged about Rizzuto's involvement.
Okay.
In January 2004, you were 10, FBI agents working with Canadian authorities arrested Vito Rizzuto at his home in Montreal. The charge? His role in the 1981 triple murder. For years, Rizzuto had evaded law enforcement despite being a known crime boss, but the U.S. authorities were determined to make him pay. After 2 years of legal battles, he was extradited to the United States in 2006, when you were 12. In your 13th year, 2007, Vito pled guilty to racketeering charges related to the murders. I don't know what racketeering is. Do you?
No.
Dishonest and fraudulent business dealings. Right on. Yeah, I'd say he's pretty guilty of that.
Yeah, certainly.
Totally.
So wait, how did they catch him? How did they know that he was charged or that he shot the first shot?
Because the Bonanno members started cooperating with the FBI.
Oh, wow. Snitches.
That's right. And they probably got stitches.
I bet.
From 2007 to 2012, he was sentenced to 10 years in a U.S. prison held at Florence ADX Supermax in Colorado.
Wow. Yeah.
Vito's imprisonment left a power vacuum in Montreal, one that quickly spiraled into chaos and bloodshed, as I have said.
Yep.
With Vito behind bars, the once unified Rizzuto empire began to fracture. His absence created a power struggle both within the family and among rival factions looking to eliminate the Rizzutos for good.
Yeah, classic.
One of the most deadly betrayals came from Salvatore, Sal the Ironworker, Montagna, a rising figure in the New York mafia.
Okay.
He attempted to wrest control of the Montreal underworld while Vito was gone. He thought he was going to come here from the U.S. and take control. I don't think so. Montagna sided with Reynald Desjardins, a longtime Rizzuto associate, to push out the old leadership. At the same time, a breakaway faction led by Giuseppe DeVito also challenged the Rizzuto loyalists. DeVito had ties to drug cartels and street gangs, making his group a serious threat.
Yeah, no kidding.
As soon as Vito was imprisoned, a violent purge of his family and closest allies began. Mm-hmm. So, Niccolo Rizzuto, Vito's father, was assassinated in 2010.
Damn.
On November 10th, 2010, Niccolo Rizzuto, the patriarch of the family, was shot through a window of his home by a sniper.
Oh my God.
The hit was seen as a direct message to Vito. His family was no longer in power.
Yeah, oh my God, that's crazy.
Paolo Renda, Vito's brother-in-law, was kidnapped in 2010. Renda, one of the Rizzuto family's top advisors, was abducted in broad daylight on May 20th of 2010. His body was never found, and he's presumed murdered.
Man, ruthless.
Agostino Cuntera, who is Vito's lieutenant, was murdered in 2010.
Yeah.
Cuntera, who temporarily led the family, was gunned down in a parking lot on June 30th, 2010.
Damn, that's crazy. He goes to jail and they're just like, we're killing your whole family.
Everybody's gone. Yeah.
That's got to be terrifying for the family, too.
This next one is wild, too.
Okay.
Giuseppe Ponytail DeVito.
Classic.
Was poisoned in prison in 2013. DeVito, a rival who led a rebellion against the Rizzutos, was found dead in his prison cell, allegedly poisoned with cyanide. The Rizzuto empire was in free fall. Rival groups, including Montagna's faction, street gangs were tearing apart what was left.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
From 2009 to 2016, a wave of assassinations, betrayals, and revenge killings turned the city into a battleground. This period saw the destruction of the Rizzuto crime family's dominance, the rise of rival factions, and increased crackdown by law enforcement. This war wasn't just about revenge, it was about power, money, and the control over one of the most lucrative criminal markets in North America.
Right. Wow, yeah. So the big guy. That's so interesting. So there was like the two kind of big families, and then the one guy comes over and he pins them against each other, and then he takes charge and becomes this whole empire. And that's all happening just under regular society.
Yeah.
That's just going on.
Yeah, we're just going to work.
We're just doing our thing. I'm freaking 10.
You're 10. You're just playing video games.
I'm playing video games. I'm having a good time with my brothers. Crazy. And then all these factions come in and tear down that guy's thing. It's all just like this. It's like war. It's like a real war kind of playing out.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes. Crazy.
Right? So when Vito Rizzuto was extradited in 2006 and imprisoned in the U.S., his absence left the Rizzuto crime family vulnerable, as we know. Longtime allies turned on the family, and enemies seized the opportunity to strike. The systematic murder of the Rizzuto family members and close associates began in 2009 and continued until 2013. So we covered some of this, but there's just a little more detail. So when it comes to Nicolo, we know a sniper shot him through a window, but his wife and daughter were home and witnessed the killing.
Oh, awful.
And the precision of the hit showed that it was a professional job, possibly carried out by Colombian or Mexican hitman hired by Rizzuto's enemies.
Okay, yeah.
When it comes to Paolo Renda, the brother-in-law, he was last seen leaving his home in northern Montreal. His car was found abandoned with the keys still inside, and his body was never recovered, but it is believed he was executed and buried to prevent any further retaliation.
Yeah.
When it comes to Agostino Cuntera, this killing removed one of the last key figures of the Rizzuto leadership, and these assassinations crippled the Rizzuto crime family. Okay. Here's the rise of the rival factions. I just wanted to include those little details.
Okay.
With the Rizzuto family in shambles, several new factions and power rivals attempted to take control of Montreal's criminal underworld. The Salvatore Montagna faction from 2011 to 2012. Salvatore Sal the Ironworker was a former acting boss of the Bonanno crime family in New York. After being deported to Canada in 2009, he saw an opportunity to seize power in Montreal. He allied with Reynald Desjardins, a former Rizzuto associate. Together, they attempted to take over the drug trade and eliminate Rizzuto loyalists. It's so funny to hear like crime loyalists. Like you hear like a religious loyalists.
Right, yeah. Followers.
Yeah. However, Desjardins soon turned on Montagna, leading to Montagna's assassination on November 24th, 2011.
Yeah. So
this is like Survivor. You can't trust anybody. No. You can only trust what people do and not what they say.
Yeah, and there's not just one person that's being rocketed into power now. It's like all these little things, and that doesn't last that long. This person gets assassinated. It's like all these people fighting for the top place right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So then there was the Reynald Desjardins coup attempt from 2011 to 2012.
Okay.
After betraying Montaigne, Reynald made his own play for power. Mm-hmm. He had support from local street gangs and Hells Angels factions, but Vito Rizzuto's return in 2012 led to a massive counterattack.
Whoa.
Desjardins was arrested in 2011 for Montaigne's murder and later convicted, eliminating him from the fight.
Wow. This is crazy. So to put this into terms that I understand, this is when I'm in grade 11 and grade 12.
Yes. You're just kissing girls and playing video games.
Yeah.
And music. You also did a lot of music.
Yeah. I had one girlfriend.
You did. And
I was
that's
chilling.
More girlfriends than I had. The Giuseppe Ponytail DeVito Rebellion was from 2010 to 2013.
Yeah.
Another major challenge came from Giuseppe Ponytail DeVito, a major drug trafficker with ties to Mexican cartels. DeVito's faction operated independently from both the Rizzutos and the Montaigne Desjardins group. He was arrested in 2010, but his faction continued fighting for control. In 2013, he was found dead in his prison cell, reportedly poisoned with cyanide, likely on Vito Rizzuto's orders. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right?
Boss is back.
Yeah.
Back in the New York groove.
He's back in the New York groove. Nice. Now we're going to talk about the law enforcement crackdown and how the mafia was weakened.
Yep.
As the power struggle intensified, Canadian law enforcement took advantage of the chaos to target organized crime like never before. So there was Project Colisée from 2006 to 2011. This massive police operation was launched in 2006 and directly targeted the Rizzuto crime family. Over 90 people were arrested, including Nicolo Rizzuto Sr. and Paolo Renda. Millions of dollars in assets were seized, and the police used wiretaps, undercover agents, and surveillance to gather intelligence on the mafia's operations.
Okay.
So they're wise to these tricks.
Yeah.
Then there was Project Magot Mastif in 2015.
Magot Mastif.
Yeah, not even that long ago. By 2015, with the Rizzuto family in ruins, the police expanded their focus to other criminal groups, including the Hells Angels, street gangs like the West End Gang, and the remnants of the Sicilian Mafia. This resulted in several high-profile arrests, including leaders of the new Mafia factions. And here's the impact of the crackdowns. The police crackdowns weakened all faction of organized crime in Montreal. The mafia lost control over some of its most lucrative businesses. Street gangs and independent traffickers filled the void. And Montreal's criminal underworld became more fragmented and unstable. The power struggle that followed Vito Rizzuto's imprisonment and death shattered the old order of Montreal's underworld. The Rizzuto crime family was decimated. Many of its leaders murdered or imprisoned. Rival factions like the Montaigne and Desjardins groups attempted to take power, but internal betrayals led to their own downfall. Mm-hmm. And law enforcement took advantage of the chaos to arrest key players and further weaken organized crime. Today, no single crime family holds absolute power over Montreal.
Oh, wow.
The city's underworld is divided among street gangs, Hells Angels, and smaller mafia factions. The days of the Rizzuto dynasty ruling Montreal's underworld are long gone.
Gone. Interesting. That we know of.
That we know
of. But that, I mean, it does make sense. I think it's harder the way law enforcement has advanced.
Yes.
And is able, it wouldn't be able to operate the same ways.
That's right.
Everything's a lot more traceable.
That's very true.
And there's cameras absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, and organized crime is like a big priority for cops.
Yeah.
Vito Rizzuto's release in 2012, because we still have to talk about that,
right,
marked one of the most dramatic chapters in Montreal's organized crime history. After spending 6 years in a U.S. prison, he returned to a city that had been torn apart by betrayal, assassinations, and shifting allegiances.
Yeah.
His family's once mighty empire had crumbled in his absence, and his father, brother-in-law, and closest allies had been moited. But Vito didn't return as a broken man. Instead, he immediately launched a brutal campaign of revenge, seeking to eliminate those responsible for his family's downfall.
Yep.
His final year was marked by bloodshed, strategic rebuilding, and an attempt to reclaim his throne. However, in 2013, Vito's unexpected death threw the Montreal underworld into chaos once again, permanently ending the Rizzuto's dynasty dominance. Mm-hmm. So here's Vito's release and immediate retaliation in 2012 to 2013. After serving his 6-year sentence in a Colorado federal prison, Vito was quietly released on October 5th, 2012.
6 years?
Yeah, that's it.
6 years for 3 murders.
That's right. He did not return to Montreal immediately, likely for security reasons. However, when he finally stepped back on to Canadian soil, he found his empire in ruins.
Right.
The death of Salvatore Montagna in November 2011 was before Vito's release, but is tied to his revenge. Though Vito was in prison at the time, many believe he orchestrated Montagna's death from behind bars, ensuring that one of his biggest threats was eliminated before he returned home.
Cool. Yep.
There was also a murder of Gatin Gosselin in January of 2013. Just a few months after Vito's return, Gatin Gosselin, a close associate of Reynald Desjardins, was gunned down outside of his home on January 22nd, 2013.
Am I right assuming these two are French?
Yeah.
Okay.
This killing was seen as a message to the Desjardins and his faction that Vito was back and seeking revenge. Desjardins himself was already arrested in 2011 for his role in the Montagna's murder, leaving his faction vulnerable. And then there was the assassination of Vincenzo Scuderi. On May 1st, 2013, Vincenzo Scuderi, a key lieutenant in the anti-Rizzuto faction, was shot dead in Montreal. This was another calculated hit, eliminating a direct threat to Vito's power. Yeah,
so he's got the people on the scene. He's killing them all.
He's going. Yeah. Then there was the death of Moreno Gallo. He was an exiled Calabrian mobster, and he had once been a Rizzuto ally, but later aligned himself with Vito's enemies. On November 10th, 2013, he was shot in the head while dining in Acapulco, Mexico.
Oh, wow.
This killing happened exactly 3 years after Niccolo Rizzuto Sr. was assassinated, suggesting a planned act of revenge.
Yep.
These strategic murders sent a clear message. Vito was back, and he was reclaiming his power through fear and violence. With his enemies dropping one by one, Vito turned his focus to rebuilding. However, the Montreal mafia landscape had changed. The Sicilian mafia was weakened, and many of Vito's old allies were either dead, imprisoned, or had switched sides. The Hells Angels and street gangs had gained power, controlling a significant share of Montreal's drug trade, and the police were watching closely, having spent years investigating organized crime. Still, Vito attempted to reestablish the Rizzuto crime family's dominance.
Yeah.
Even as he did this by strengthening international drug trade. So even as he took revenge, Vito secured new drug routes. He reestablished connections with the Sicilian mafia. He sought alliances with South American cartels, and he relied on West End gang and corrupt port officials to move cocaine shipments. Mm-hmm. So it seemed like he was still, even though the landscape changed, he was like, I can still do this.
He can still figure it out.
And then he wanted to regain control over Montreal. He wanted to restore the old hierarchy where the Sicilian mafia controlled the city's criminal operations. This is very Sopranos.
Absolutely.
He pressured street gangs and independent criminals to fall in line. He used violence and intimidation to enforce loyalty, and he made it clear that the Rizzuto name still carried weight. But before he could complete his resurgence, fate intervened.
Uh-oh.
Because he died on December 23rd, 2013.
How old is he?
67.
Yeah.
And he died suddenly in Montreal's Sacré-Cœur Hospital.
Oh, no.
The official cause of death was lung cancer complications.
Oh, damn.
However, many in the underworld believe he was poisoned, a theory that has never been proven. His death shocked the criminal world. Just a year earlier, Vito had seemed unstoppable, orchestrating revenge killings, securing alliances, and reasserting power. With Vito gone, the Rizzuto crime family lost its last true leader.
Yeah.
And what did Vito's death mean for the power struggle? Well, it was the end of the Rizzuto dynasty, and without his leadership, the remaining Rizzuto loyalists were scattered. Rival factions saw an opportunity to seize control again, and the Sicilian mafia lost its grip on Montreal.
Yep.
No one could fill Vito's shoes, and the Rizzuto family collapsed as a dominant force.
He was crafty.
He was crafty.
He's real crafty, that guy.
The fragmentation of Montreal's underworld. With the Rizzutos no longer in power, the organized crime scene became fractured. The Hells Angels and street gangs gained influences. The Calabrian Ndrangheta made moves to control drug trafficking, and independent factions fought for control over criminal enterprises. Montreal was no longer ruled by a single boss. Instead, it became a free-for-all. And in the wake of Vito's death, law enforcement cracked down hard on organized crime as well. So major drug operations were dismantled, Rizzuto associates were arrested, and the Montreal mafia's influence diminished. Vito Rizzuto was one of the most powerful and feared mafia bosses Canada has ever seen. His return in 2012 marked a violent resurgence, but his death in 2013 sealed the fate of his empire. The Rizzuto crime family never recovered, and Montreal's criminal world has never been the same since.
Yeah, well, makes sense. This guy ran it.
That's right. He was, like I said, he was the bridge.
Yeah. Yeah, he got it all going. He made this huge thing out of it.
That's right.
Yeah, he's dead.
Now he's dead. After Vito's death, the Montreal's mafia world descended into chaos.
Yep.
Multiple factions fought for dominance, and no single leader was able to fully replace the Rizzuto's authority. But it was the rise of the Calabrian Ndrangheta mafia.
Okay.
One of the biggest beneficiaries of the Rizzuto's family downfall were them. They were a powerful Italian criminal organization that had long rivaled the Sicilian mafia. They controlled major drug networks in Ontario and had long sought to expand its influence in Quebec. See, in Ontario, they're like in Peel or something. With the Rizzutos weakened, the Calabrians moved into Montreal's lucrative drug trade and formed new alliances with local crime groups. And they had ties to Reynald Desjardins, a former Rizzuto ally who had turned against them.
Yeah.
This shift marked the first time in decades that a non-Sicilian group was in a position of influence over Montreal's mafia.
Wow, interesting, yeah.
Right? And with the traditional Italian mafia weakened, the Hells Angels and street gangs capitalized on the power vacuum. The Hells Angels reemerged as dominant players in the drug trade, leveraging their biker network to control cocaine and methamphetamine distribution. Montreal street gangs, particularly Haitian and North African groups, gained more autonomy and started playing a larger role in the organized crime. And the Rizzutos had once brokered peace among these different groups, but now violence escalated as alliances broke down and rivalries intensified.
Yeah. Makes sense. Everything's falling apart.
That's right. But we're not done yet, because there were more assassinations of the remaining Rizzuto loyalists.
Oh, wow.
Anyone still loyal to the Rizzuto family became a target in the years following Vito's death.
No, I wonder what loyalty to their family looks like.
Who knows?
Like,
yeah.
What are they doing exactly?
I don't think there's a rule book.
No.
I think it's just like, you like the Rizzutos, and I'm drunk.
Right.
And I'm mad at you.
And then they just start killing them around.
That's right.
Around the towns.
And everybody gets paranoid.
Yeah.
Everyone's paranoid.
Right.
In 2014, Juan Ramon Fernandez, a Rizzuto hitman and enforcer, was murdered in Sicily, showing that even international associates were being hunted down. In 2015, Rocco Solicito, a high-ranking Rizzuto figure, was gunned down in Laval. And in 2016, Lorenzo Giordano and Fabio Rizzi, two Rizzuto associates, were murdered in daylight hits. The Rizzuto's family infrastructure collapsed, and its remaining members either fled, were killed, or were forced to align with other groups. So who holds power now?
That's what I want to know.
As of the 2020s, Montreal's underworld no longer functions under one dominant mafia boss. Instead, several criminal factions share power, creating a more fragmented and unpredictable landscape.
Yeah.
The Calabrian Narangata continue to play a key role in criminal operations. They control portions of the drug trade, particularly in Ontario and parts of Quebec. They maintain connections with Colombian and Mexican cartels, allowing them to import large quantities of cocaine. And they have avoided the high-profile violence that led to Rizzuto's downfall, operating in more of a secretive, low-profile manner.
Okay, yeah.
The Hells Angels, they have a rise to prominence. They now dominate the province's drug trade, operating with less competition from the Italian mafia. They control the methamphetamine market and have expanded into legal and semi-legal businesses. Law enforcement has targeted them heavily, but they remain one of the most powerful criminal organizations in Canada.
That makes sense. I wonder how they do get away with it, like what they're getting away with, and what their businesses are. What are Hells Angels' businesses?
I don't know. I guess maybe we'll do an episode.
Yeah, you should.
And then there's the West End Gang. They maintain a key role. They're a primarily Irish criminal group, and they continue to play a major role in drug smuggling through the port of Montreal.
Oh, really?
They're
the West End Gang?
Yeah.
West End Gang?
The West End Gang. They're one of the biggest suppliers of cocaine in the city, often working with Mexican cartels. And their low-profile nature has kept them out of the spotlight, allowing them to avoid the violent infighting that plagued the Rizzutos. There are some remnants of the Rizzuto family, and it still carries weight. Leonardo Rizzuto, Vito's son, was briefly rumored to be a successor, but he has kept a low profile and faced multiple legal troubles. Surviving Rizzuto allies have been forced to align with other factions or step back from leadership roles, and the Sicilian mafia in Montreal no longer holds sole control.
Yeah.
Since the downfall of the Rizzuto family, law enforcement has intensified efforts to break apart organized crime networks in Montreal. So there was two major operations that targeted mafia, Hells Angels, and street gang members. And we talked about one, which is Project Mago Mastiff, and the other one is Project Clemenza. Project Clemenza was in 2016, and it dismantled a large-scale drug network linked to Montreal's underworld. There's a new focus on the Port of Montreal smuggling. Authorities have tightened security at the Port of Montreal, which had long been a key hub for drug trafficking. Yeah. There's increased surveillance, and customs enforcement have made it harder for criminals to smuggle cocaine shipments.
Sure.
And this has forced organized crime groups to find alternative smuggling routes, making the trade riskier and more expensive.
Yeah.
Is the Rizzuto crime family still relevant? What do you think?
No.
No, they're not. No.
I don't think that they are still relevant.
They're not.
But it's interesting. It's interesting to hear who was playing what role in smuggling. I didn't realize there was like an Irish
street gang
that was also doing smuggling. I had heard that Montreal was a big importer of where drugs were coming through. Like I know that port was like a thing, and that's like all the drugs came through there. But I'm always just so curious. I'm like, how are they getting it? Like, how is it?
Through the ports.
Like, and so it only. Like you just have to assume there's corruption involved. Is what I think. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know?
And that's it. Yeah, there's definitely corruption involved.
Because it is a limited entry.
Yeah. There's only so many places you can enter.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have the longest coastline.
Big coastline. Yeah, that's a good point.
The Rizzuto crime family once ruled Montreal with an iron grip, but their reign ended with Vito's death. The Calabrian Narangata, Hells Angels, and street gangs have taken over much of the city's criminal operations. Law enforcement continues to target organized crime, but new players always emerge to fill the void. And Montreal is no longer controlled by a single mafia boss, making its criminal underworld more chaotic than ever. The golden era of the Sicilian mafia in Canada is over, but the game itself continues, just under new rules and new players.
Mm-hmm.
Creep of the week.
Creep of the week, yeah. What do you got for me?
This week's Creep of the Week is Benoit Roberge, the double-dealing detective.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, creep detective, creepo.
No one goes unscathed on Canadian Creepies, not even the people who are supposed to be upholding the law.
Yeah.
Corruption.
Not even you guys.
Not even you guys. Corruption, betrayal, and crime don't just happen in the shadows. Sometimes they happen in broad daylight, from behind a police badge. This week's Creep of the Week is none other than Benoit Roberge, a high-ranking Montreal police officer who secretly worked for the very criminals that he was supposed to be taking down.
Benoit. We knew it.
We knew it.
We knew it, Roberge.
Roberge wasn't just any officer. He was one of Quebec's top experts on organized crime. For more than 20 years, he led investigations into the mafia, biker gangs, and drug cartels. He worked closely with anti-gang units, provincial police, and even the RCMP. Mm-hmm. If there was a major bust in Montreal, chances are Roberge was in the loop. But behind the scenes, he was leading a double life.
He was supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them.
That's right. He was secretly meeting with criminals, passing them confidential police files, and accepting bribes.
Oh my God.
And the worst part? His leaks put actual lives at risk.
What the heck?
Informants were being exposed, police operations were being compromised, and criminals who should have been arrested, they walked free because they had someone on the inside protecting them.
What are you doing?
Well, he got busted, and here's how his web of lies was unraveled.
Good.
By 2013, law enforcement knew something was not right. Too many failed operations, too many criminals one step ahead.
You can only go so far.
Someone was tipping them off.
Yep.
Investigators started digging, and one name kept coming up. Benoit Roberge.
Benoit Roberge.
So they set a trap. He had been making deals with former Hells Angels, but what he didn't know was that this biker was now cooperating with the police. Mm-hmm. They arranged a fake meetup where Roberge thought he was doing an under-the-table deal. But instead of getting paid, he got arrested. And the best part? He got caught in a grocery store parking lot, literally holding a bag full of money from the deal.
Brother.
In the end, Roberge...
Nice try, Benoit.
Yeah, nice try. In the end, Roberge pleaded guilty and got 8 years in prison, which, let's be honest, is nothing compared to the damage he caused.
Yeah, no kidding. That's nothing.
He claimed he did it for money, but some believe he was in too deep, playing both sides, and couldn't even stop if he wanted to.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that organized crime isn't just about gangsters and mobsters. It's about corruption and the institutions that are supposed to stop them. Uh-huh. The Rizzuto family may have had some enemies on the streets, but the real danger, it was the people inside the system who was supposed to bring them down.
That's right.
And that's why this week's Creep of the Week is Benoit Roberge, the dirty cop who sold out his badge to the highest bidder. Let us know what you think. Do you think he got off too easy? Should his sentence have been longer?
What do you think?
That's I was asking the listeners.
I do think he should have a longer sentence.
Yeah, he's definitely more than 8 years. That's messed up. 8 years.
8 years is not representative of what he's done.
That's right.
I bet a lot of people died because of that, Benoit.
A lot of people, like a lot of informants probably.
Yeah.
And informants a lot of the time are like vulnerable people who are like addicts who are trying to get out of the scene. And so he just killed, just like,
I try to get
just
out,
like the most vulnerable kind of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
The story of the Montreal Mafia is one of power, betrayal, and violence, an underworld built on loyalty, but often undone by greed and revenge. From the rise of the Rizzuto family to the bloody aftermath of Vito Rizzuto's downfall, we've seen how organized crime in Montreal isn't just a relic of the past. It's an ongoing, evolving force. Despite high-profile arrests, assassinations, and police crackdowns, the Mafia continues to find ways to survive and adapt.
And as we saw with Creep of the Week, even law enforcement wasn't immune to corruption. Benoit Roberge proved that the biggest threats don't always come from the outside.
So what do you think? Is the Rizzuto family's influence truly over? Or is another power shift happening behind the scenes? Let us know on Instagram at Canadian Creepies or by emailing us at CanadianCreepies@gmail.com.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Montreal's criminal underworld. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious,
and keep it creepy.
Ooh, creepy.
Don't let the bed creeps by.
Did I do that?
Thank you to Kyle McDonald for editing and composing our theme song.